At the Office, Cleveland's home for sports talk that never clocks out. From the latest headlines to heated debates, we're diving into everything sports. It's your hosts, Noah and Matt.
Cleveland! Welcome back to the Office, the show where we talk all things Cleveland sports. It is good to be live on a Monday with my friend Matt. Matt, buddy, how are you doing?
I'm wonderful. I've been off for quite a few weeks. Excited to be sitting back down with you, getting ready to talk some Cleveland sports, specifically my favorite sport. Couldn't be better.
Yeah, I agree. It couldn't be better over here as well. But actually, it could because I just came back from the Reds Guardians game and they looked awful. They looked sloppy. They lost to that horrible, horrible team down in Kentucky. Shout out all of my girlfriend's family down in Kentucky. With that being said, though, make sure you join us too at the office. Comment on YouTube, Facebook, X, text the show, or call the show 216-260-3433. That's 216-260-3433. Of course, if you are listening to the recording after our typical live, feel free to still shoot us a text or leave a comment, and we will get back to you as we can. Matt, before we get into the Cleveland Guardians, I want to give a quick shout out. I know you are a big fan of the sponsor of the page of the channel over here, and that is D&D Meadery. Derek and Dominic, two twin brothers from Northeast Ohio, grew up in Madison, now crafting the most delectable honey wine in Menor, Ohio. Use code @the-office-CLE for 5% off. Use that code to buy 2 bottles. You get a free shot glass as well. Matt has bought multiple bottles of this stuff. Matt, tell the people how good it is.
It's so good. I was actually getting ready to call myself out here, as I'm sure some of you noticed that are watching. I didn't have a bottle to show. That's because all mine are gone again. I need to restock, try out some of the new flavors I haven't gotten to yet. Maple syrup, the maple syrup honey wine, phenomenal. I recommend that being your second bottle when you order. You can't go wrong.
They have 5 or 6 new flavors out, and there are stands popping up everywhere in Northeast Ohio to check these guys out. This stuff is really good. I don't just say that as a goer-outer. I love having a couple sips of this before I go hit the flats or go hit wherever I'm going, Ohio City, whatnot. Again, use code @the-office-CLE for 5% off. Buy 2 bottles, get a free shot glass included. That's all fine and dandy, Matt. It's time to talk Guardians. And I thought I was going to be a positive, happy camper over here. They've had some good, they've had some bad. I've seen some things I like. I'm excited for some prospects to get called up. And then I go and watch this stinker of a baseball game down the street at Progressive Field, and the Guardians lose 7-4. So I open it with the question. We're kind of at the halfway point. We're a little bit earlier than the halfway point, but we got 2.5 months of baseball to go off of. Tell me your thoughts on the Cleveland Guardians thus far, how you're feeling, what you're thinking. Are they buyers? Are they sellers? I open the floor to you, buddy. Get after it.
I think if I had to, kind of give it the one word overarching summary of our season so far, the 2.5 months we've had, it would be disappointing. As much as I hate to admit it, I'm very disappointed in what I've seen out of the team so far this year. I mean, I think everybody knows and kind of agrees that a lot of what happened in the regular season and postseason last year, and I even hate using this word, but it was lucky. Like, we always just found a way to win. We pulled stuff out that probably shouldn't have happened, but it worked out for us anyway. I mean, I can't even count how many bloop singles that were right between the outfield and infield that I saw that they just don't happen in the MLB that much. Stuff like that isn't happening this year. We had a lot of guys last year that I think overplayed what their true talent is, which I'm not saying they can't get back to that, but it's hard to replicate the season we had last year with basically the same team and not a majority, but a good chunk of players regressing from the form they were in last year. I mean, there's a lot of guys on this list here I have down that are just downright struggling compared to how they were last year. And when you have all that going on, it's hard to be a very successful team. Now, granted, we're still over 500. We're not, a horrible team at all. We're still contending for our division. I'm very disappointed. And if I had to use a second word, I would say worried about the next half of the season as we're kind of framing it here.
Yeah, so I think the sentiment is shared a decent amount throughout Cleveland. And I agree with you in some ways, and I disagree with you in other ways. I think this team tends to show some of those flashes from last year, hence why they still have an over 500 record right now, 34-31 after the loss to the Reds tonight on Monday at the time of recording. That being said, it's the same issues that we've talked about year in and year out with this team. Where's the hitting help? The starting pitching has been better. Some of these trades have worked out. We'll get into the trades and our thoughts on them in a second, but um, it feels like the roller coaster ride year in and year out that we go through every time with this team as of like 2018 and on. One year they're really good, the next year the next year they're really good, but we're still never in that echelon of really being a contender. And it sucks because you can go and point blame at the Dolans, or you can go and point blame at the regression of some of these players that we thought are going to be really good. Kyle Manzardo is a fan favorite. Everybody thinks he could be a really good batter. He's been ice cold lately. That's an example of some of these players that we think can pop off. Same thing with Big Christmas to a lesser degree. I know you kind of wanted to talk about Jay Honk. So I'll tap it back over to you, but I think he's another example of someone you thought, oh, maybe he can be some power hitting help, and his batting average is like I can't even think of an analogy to use there, but Jay Honk, some of this batting help. Why don't you dive into that?
I think he was one that a lot of guys were hopeful for. You didn't really see, the elite level hitting out of him. You saw elite level power out of him last season, but there also definitely were the holes in his, at bat and his approach that you could see, but he managed to work through it. Obviously, it was a rather small sample size we had of him last year. And I think a lot of people fell in love with one postseason home run and was like, oh my God, this is the guy. Me included. I won't deny it. That was a legendary moment in the season. I'll never forget it, regardless of how his career shakes out here. But I think more so the sentiment with him is just everybody so desperately wanted him to be good because he's a fun player. And, I think I'm really hoping, obviously, we sent him down here, 3-4 days ago now. And the big focus of him being down there, he's really working on his timing and his confidence, which I think are his two biggest problems. Obviously, everybody wants to work on their biggest problems. But we've seen a handful of guys go down to Columbus, specifically in the Cleveland program, go down to Columbus, spend even like 2 months down there, and then they come back looking like a whole new player that's much better. I'm still pulling for it, but I do kind of think we've seen the end of the big Christmas run in Cleveland, as much as I hate to admit it. I don't
Yeah,
really see him coming back and working out. I think an interesting, fun little fact is for anybody that remembers way back when Sin Soo Choo had a driving while intoxicated charge in downtown Cleveland.
I
He
saw
he
this
blew
meme.
higher than John Kenzie Noel's batting average for that. So that's just, kind of where his season's been at. Obviously, you could turn it around, but that's not a great look.
He reminds me a lot of, and I don't want to give his career the kiss of death because he's still on our roster. He's still on our farm. His career kind of reminds me of Oscar Gonzalez, where he had the big SpongeBob moment in that Yankees series, and everybody wanted him to be great, and he just never was. And they were both outfielders too. You talked a little bit about Guardians getting sent down to Columbus and kind of reclaiming where they were at and getting brought back up and working out. And I kind of want to give a shout out to a guy that I fell in love with the postseason run last year as well. And that is one Brian Rocchio, who was pissing me off to be very, very, very highest degree. But since he got sent down to Columbus, he's at 95 playing appearances, 263 batting average, 6 home runs, 351 on base percent. Like he's doing really well down there. And especially with some of the shakiness we've seen out of Arias now and that kind of second base shortstop role that Rocchio was kind of rotating between. I could see him making some sense this year coming back. I want to shout out Rogers First in Cuyahoga Falls for giving you the props on the BAC. But yeah, what do you think about Rocchio? Do you think we could see him again this year? Do you want to see him again? Any thoughts on that?
I mean, listen, we need a spark on offense. I feel like I said this probably 20 times last year and probably, 5 times already this year. We need something
20
to spark
times the
us.
year before that and 20 times the year before that. Continue. I'm sorry.
We so desperately need to find that spark. Like, look, I'm a Lane Thomas lover. I'm a David Fry lover. I don't think they're going to do enough to do that for us.
David Fry's an interesting one to me too, because in theory, I get the idea of, oh, he's a very good bat. He's going to come back and he's going to do that. But he's coming back off of surgery, this, that, and the third. So to put all your eggs in the David Fry basket to be the spark we need to get us back to the level we were at scares me, which makes me think and want to talk a little bit about some of the prospects down in AAA as well. Matt, I'm going to take us real quick to commercial break. When we come back, we can hit on some prospects. We'll hit a little bit more on the trades that happened last year. Of course, Josh Naylor, Andres Jimenez, and the players that we got back in that. What we think is, the outlook for the Cleveland Guardians. Again, the big question, are they buyers or are they sellers? You're listening to At the Office, Cleveland sports show, and we'll be back after these commercial messages. And we are back at the office talking all things Cleveland sports, specifically the Cleveland Guardians today. Don't forget, you can check us out on all the different social platforms, Instagram, TikTok, X, Facebook, YouTube, you name it, we're on it, @SignTheOfficeCLE. Drop us a follow or a subscription, depending on what verbiage makes sense for the platform, because it helps us grow the brand of At the Office a ton. Me, Matt, John, Eric love doing the stuff we do over here, talking sports, getting to interact with fellow Clevelanders, like some of the people that have been in the comments today. Shout out Eric as well, one of the co-hosts here. He does make a beautiful point. We are only 8 games back, and it is still only June. Lastly, shout out Fans First Sports Network for everything that they do in supporting us. And lastly, make sure you go check out attheofficecle.com. You can go get yourself some merch, get yourself some different items to help support the boys over here at the office. All right, Matt, I talked a little bit about prospects. I talked a little bit about people we've acquired from trades. Where do you want to go? Do you want to talk prospects? You want to talk about the trades? Where do you want to hit?
Let's go to the trades first, because I think that's going to be more of an argumentative segment, and we're both kind of excited about some prospects, so that'll be a good way to, circle back around to being friends with each other.
Tie the knot. I'm with you for sure.
I mean, I think the one big thing I look at with trades right now is, how pitiful our offense has been, how little contact and power we've had. And I just think about, I don't know, just a random name I'll throw out there that I think would be really good for this team in terms of offense this year. I mean, I don't know. Who could you go? I don't know. A guy like Josh Naylor, maybe, having a career year. He would be awesome to have on this team right now.
I get what you're saying 100%. And I miss Josh Naylor. I'm a big fan of both the Naylor boys. Shout out Grandma. That was her favorite player, which got me into Bo as I was coming up working for the Akron Rubber Ducks in Double-A. But I understand the thought process. And as much as these trades, we're talking, of course, about Jimenez and Naylor, hurt us as fans because they're fan favorite players, right? I still have their bobbleheads behind me on the shelf. I get why they go ahead and make these moves, because they're starting to see the decline. Jimenez is a great example of this. He's batting .206 after a hot start, 3 home runs, not even arguably, it's the worst year of his career. And he was showing signs of that decline last year, and they moved off of him and they got a quality starter, which I don't want to say after the game he put out there today in Luis Ortiz, who is, I believe, 3-7 now with a different ERA. But at the time of me writing down my notes, he had a 4 basically ERA, 3-6 and 71 Ks, and he looked good in the Yankees series the last time he pitched. And I think he pitched in the Astros too, but no, he wouldn't have. Regardless. Back to Naylor, though. I get what you're saying 100% because he's the type of power batter that this team needs. And we kind of got the watered down version of it in a Carlos Santana. I'm sorry, the name escaped me for a second. Obviously, Santana's 40, a little bit washed compared to his fire self. He's got a decent stat line. He's batting .255, 7 home runs, 208 at bats. But again, I start thinking about what I want to do here. And you got a guy like CJ Kayfis in AAA, and you have Kyle Manzardo and some of these other players that could be going in there when a 40-year-old man is taking up the bats. And I know we love Carlos Santana. I'm just all over the place right now because there's like part of me that gets some of the stuff that we're going on, but part of me is just like, well, why haven't we seen a Chase DeLauder? Why haven't we seen a CJ Kayfis? Why? Yeah, I don't know. I turn the ball back to you with this. I agree the Naylor for Slade trade is kind of up in the air. Slade's looked good though, right? You can attest to that. But the Jimenez for Luis Ortiz is already showing the fruits of its labor, in my opinion, especially with the money, despite how much me and you both liked Andres Jimenez. That is some of my spiel. I kick it back to you now.
I think the one big thing that you brought up there that I want to talk about, without getting too deep into the prospects there, is you were, I don't want to say dogging on Santana. He's having a very solid year. I mean, he's got 7 home runs like we talked about. And depending on how you look at it, I know we talked about it a little bit. If we're buying, selling, holding at the deadline, whatever you think, obviously it depends on how you want to look at it. But if you're still taking this club to make a postseason run this year, there's absolutely no reason we should be considering not having Santana as our everyday first baseman for at least, you got to play it month by month with him, I think. I mean, he's playing well. He is an effective bat for us in a lineup that we just spent the last 20 minutes talking about how we don't have many effective bats. You can't sit him down. I get he's 40. I get for developmental reasons, it would be nice to get some of these other guys in there, get Manzardo more time, call up some young guys that we talked about and we'll get into here. But if you're looking at this as, a buying team that's still going to be in contention come the end of the season for at least, the AL Central or whatever you think this team's peak is, he's got to be part of, I don't want to say the daily rotation, the daily lineup, but you can't sit him down. You can't just move on from him when he's probably our 3rd or 4th best bat in the lineup right now.
Yeah, but we talk a little bit about needing that like explosiveness, that firecracker, that offensive blow up that helps this team really hit its next level. And that's where I struggle with the role. And this is why I go back and forth, like I said in my original take of tying in, the trades with the prospects and Santana and whatnot, is the fact that, yes, Santana is one of our best bats right now. But you know what you got on him, and it's only going to continue to diminish with how age affects a professional athlete, right? So then you look at some of what these guys are doing, and you said that we'll talk about it in a second. So I'll bring up like CJ Kayfis, for example. He has 192 at-bats, a 323 batting average, and 6 home runs in AAA. Chase DeLauder, an outfielder, of course, didn't start the season. He was recovering from some injuries. 62 at bats, 226 batting average, 3 home runs, but a 13 game on base streak. When you're talking about, Big Christmas struggling in the outfield, and you're talking about rotating in some random, like Jonathan Rodriguez played right field today. Lane Thomas was back, and I think he struck out all 4 times. He struck out looking on 3 pitches straight down the middle. Or no, I think he struck out swinging. Regardless, he struck out at 3 pitches right down the middle in the center of the damn zone. I'm heated. I say all of this to say you want one of these moments. You need a guy that comes in here and lights the field on fire and gives us another offensive spark that we need to take that next level, yeah, the safety of a 255 batting average on 7 home runs with Santana. Again, this is stats before tonight's game against the Reds. Yeah, it's nice. He's like our third, fourth bat, but third or fourth best bat, I should say. But you got some of these young kids that could really light a fire on the field potentially. And I know that's also a gamble to take as well, but I'm not sitting here acting like I have the answers for the Cleveland Guardians and what could get them to at least being a wild card and another fun little playoff run. Lord knows how far they make it, but yeah, I don't know. I kick it back to you, man.
I mean, not to continue beating the same conversation. Like we've been kind of focused on the outfield here, center and right. Obviously, left field's pretty well locked up. But like you said, if you're going to take a gamble on a young guy, it might as well be where we're not even remotely secure at the moment. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
center and right field, in my opinion, right now we have nothing. Like we have just random guys out there that are a revolving door of not really playing that well, not hitting that well. And I think that's where you got to start playing that game of, let's call some random guys up, maybe some guys me and Noah aren't even going to talk about yet here, and just see what happens, see if one of them lights a spark. And honestly, you brought him up a little bit ago, and I know, he's just getting back into the swing of things. He's starting his season later compared to everybody else. What I've seen out of DeLauder so far, I don't think he's it either, to be honest. I'm not saying he couldn't be, but he's not having the year I would hope after all the hype and all the potential that was around him.
Yeah, but you got to also think he's coming off a little bit of injury. I'm not saying call him up. Well, if they called him up and he played in like the next series, I wouldn't be upset by any means, or if he even played in this series. But I also get the argument of let him ride in AAA a little bit longer and get back used to play baseball before we throw him to the majors. We got a couple things in the comments I want to get to before we get back into saying if either trade was a success. I know we were jumping all over the place again. The first is from Barry Northrup that says Class A for a big bat ? I know when we did our preseason show together, you predicted this a little bit. I'm obviously a big Class A fan. I have a couple of his jerseys. I love the walkout. I love everything about Class A. He's the best closer in baseball. Selfishly, I would say no, just to have Class A still be a Guardian, but I see the potential and the sense that makes sense, especially when Barry says something like Smith is your closer, which Cade Smith is my second favorite pitcher, I guess, relief pitcher, and why wouldn't he be? He's fucking filthy. But what do you think about that trade, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say basically the same thing you ended with there is if there is one strong point of our team that we should be shouting out here, that reaches past my disappointment I'm feeling this year, it's still our bullpen. Always has been. For the last few years, it's always been the bullpen. I think we have, probably two guys outside of Clase that could go be the closer on other teams, and they're just setup guys for us right now. That being Smith, and I know he's also been shaky this year, but I think Hunter Gaddis is a very good relief pitcher still. He's more of a guy that can give you 2-3 innings, not necessarily a 1 inning, shut the lights off type of guy. But
Right.
Smith has been so dominant that I mean, I feel the same way about Clase. I think he is not only a very good baseball player, but he just fits in Cleveland well, like, the Cleveland spirit, the city of Cleveland.
Yeah,
but if
for
we
sure.
made that move to spark this offense like we've been talking about this whole episode, I wouldn't hate it. I wouldn't be mad. I wouldn't be sitting there crying like I was when we gave up Jimenez, which I'm fully over now, by the way. But
I
I
could
wouldn't,
only
I wouldn't
imagine
hate
why. I would be bittersweet about it just because I love watching Clase pitch in person, seeing a guy throw 100 and whatever it is for that exact pitch, absolute heat, and striking guys out is just a beauty to see in person. Not that we can't see it out of some of these other guys. So bittersweet for me. I would rather keep Clase just selfishly, but I get the thought process of doing this. Roger First in Cuyahoga Falls also says there's one thing to consider with our young prospects with this season and next, Who and how many do they expose to the 40-man roster before the pending strike in 2026? It's a fair point with how all of the bartering and all of that works in the MLB, that you don't want to expose too many guys too early, especially because it'll probably be a strike season after 2026. You got anything to add on that, Matt?
I mean, I think, the thing with that is you kind of have to look at it like I was talking about earlier. And I mean, like Eric said way up earlier in the chat, we are 8 games back from our division, and odds are only the division winner out of the Central's getting in. We might get 2 in, but the way this season's looking up and the American League is shaking up, it's probably only going to be our division winner this year. So you kind of have to make that call here soon when you're thinking about, the long-term plan is, do you think this team can win this season? And not to say we should tank or anything, because tanking doesn't really do much in the MLB, but that's kind of in my mind how you have to play it is, if you don't think we're going to win and go on a run this year, maybe you do play it a little safer with some of these young guys. But at the end of the day, you should be out there to win games. But also, like Eric said, this club really only cares about money. So if they can avoid having to pay a lot out come 2026, they might do it.
Yeah. I agree with everything you said as well. It kind of echoes the same sentiments that I had when I brought up the question. Let's wrap this back into some of the talking points that we had prior to the viewer comments, though. So the Slade for Naylor, and obviously there's other parts to these trades. I'm just talking about the biggest part. Slade Sassoni for Josh Naylor. How do you feel about the trade? Are you upset about it? Are you lukewarm on it? Like, give it I don't want to say a letter grade. I feel like that's tacky. It's still way too early to tell, but give me your thoughts on that trade specifically.
I wore an Arizona Diamondbacks hat for this episode for a reason. I don't even want to say I'm absolutely not a fan of the trade. I just look at where this team is now and think about how many arms we have that are solid and how many bats we have that are very much so not solid. And it hurts me to see that, Naylor's having not even arguably, he's having a career year out in the desert. And I would love to have that in Cleveland right now. I think that's the spark that we kind of need right now. Obviously, Slade has been working out pretty well, but a guy you're going to see every 2 to 3 days versus a guy that's going to come in every day and give you 283. It's hard for me to sit here and justify that.
Yeah, I'm lukewarm on this one out of the 2 major trades from last year. Slade and getting some starting pitching help here when we desperately needed it. That was a big knock on the team last year as well. I totally get it. He's 1-2, 4.87 ERA, 20 strikeouts. Obviously, he hasn't played that many games yet for us, but he's shown plenty of promise and plenty of things to be excited about. So I'm lukewarm on it for the same reasons that you were saying, though, where you're losing the power batting and the career year potentially that Naylor's having right now over in Arizona. Of course, you break him up with his little brother Bo, which it makes me sad personally. That being said, lukewarm. So I'm kind of with you, but I'm optimistic because, again, anytime they make trades like this, for some reason, it ends up working out in our favor, despite us being cheap asses. Now, the Andres Jimenez trade, I know he was one of your favorite. Of course, the first time we went to a home opener together, you bought the jersey of Andres Jimenez. You were very upset when that trade went through. But what do you think about it now?
I mean, like I kind of hinted at there, Jimenez is not having a good year at all. And I mean, I'm not trying to dog on the man. We're 2.5 months into the season. He could end up with a 280 batting average by the time it's said and done. I don't think that's likely by any means, but kind of the way I look at it is, I mean, I haven't really noticed a decline in second base play. Obviously, we have lost a platinum glover at second base, so it's not as good, but it's not like every game there's an error poking through the second base position.
Oh, I could tell you about a couple today, and that's just me being salty that I spent time at the ballpark when I could have been doing the show a little bit earlier and getting on to some other things in life because I never saw the Reds play the Guardians in person. But I digress. I'm sorry. Get back to your take.
And then, I mean, you flip that and you look at the offense. And again, I know there's so many things that affect this outside of, just the player. Same goes for Naylor. There's no guarantee they have the year they're having in Cleveland if they were here. But
Right.
his bat's been pretty rough in Toronto. And all of the guys that we've tried to rotate in at second base have been pretty rough in Cleveland. So, like, I don't really, when I look at it that way, it's almost like we didn't give up anything but a more expensive contract and a guy we'd have to extend for a lot of money to maybe open the doors up for a trade at the deadline to bring in a bat or, whatever we do, whether the Dolans put that money in their pocket, most likely outcome, or we make a move with that money, least likely outcome.
Yeah.
There's really no difference in this team to me right now.
We're talking about second base real quick. I need me full-time Daniel Schneemann. I want it. I don't even care. I know he can be weak. He's weak against lefties, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like on paper, technically, but 246, 7 home runs, 18 RBIs, 35 hits. Screw it. Give it to me all day, every day until we get something better to put in there when Bazana is ready or something like that, because he's been fun to watch this year when he's good. When he's on, he's on. And maybe that's the firecracker we need. I don't know. I'm ecstatic about this trade. I have loved watching Luis Ortiz pitch for us after he got through some of the shakiness in the regular season. I was excited to see him today. Of course, the Reds hit everything and then some, not only on him, but every reliever they put in after him as well. So it kind of sucked today, but I'm overall happy with this trade as it stands today. Jimenez can pick it up and Ortiz could suck. So I'm not putting my stamp of approval on anything yet. But if I was to have to say if I liked it yet, right now, 100% all the way in. One last thing I want to cover, unless you had anything else you wanted to cover, and then we'll kind of talk about the buying and selling. Oh, what do you want to cover? You have that shit-eating grin. Go ahead, my friend. I'm sorry.
I have something that I think is going to spark a little bit of heat here in today's episode. I'm going all the way back. I don't know if any of our viewers right now were there for our show where we were talking about who we wanted the Guardians to take with the first overall pick. And obviously the man got hurt. I'm not trying to dig at that. But even before he got hurt, Benzana, in my unprofessional baseball fan, armchair baseball player opinion, has not looked like a number one overall pick. As we've said multiple times in this episode, we are 2.5 months into his first season at the professional level. You can't judge a book by that. Yes, full season. However, if anybody here remembers the two names that I was so high on, Charlie Condone or Jack Caglione, Jack's already to the majors, and he's not doing super hot in the majors, but he's got 25 at-bats in the majors. Looking at his minor league stats, 322, 15, and 56. Charlie Condone, 326, 2, and 15. We made the wrong pick. At least in this moment, we made the wrong decision, and you cannot convince me otherwise. We should have gone with one of those two guys.
Okay, like I get what you're saying to an extent, but Travis, before he got hurt, was batting 252, had 4 home runs, 17 RBIs. His OPS is solid at 795. Like there's good stats there to back it. I understand what you're saying because it was the first overall pick and we have a guy that's already made it to the majors. But if he ends up being our second baseman for years and years to come, next season, for example, I think it's still 110% worth the first pick. So I'm gonna turn you down a little bit because don't hate on my man Travis. He is our Australian golden boy, and some of the stuff that you've seen from this kid too makes you just buy into him more about what you want me to do to help the guys that I see on film or this, that, and the third. You remember that quote from a little while back? I'm obviously paraphrasing right now, but some of the stuff he does, that the competitive nature that you see in him just makes me excited to see what he can turn into even though it might not be a major leaguer this season, but Lord knows we've seen crazier things happen. We are Cleveland sports fans after all. You got anything in response to that, or are we just going to agree to disagree?
I mean, we're going to end up agreeing to disagree, but the one thing that my response is, yeah, we can be excited about what he, could turn into and what he could develop to. But then on the other hand, once this episode's over, go to www.youtube.com and look up Jack Caglione's minor league highlights. And that's what they have. They're not waiting on him to develop anymore. And we could have had that. We could have had an outfield spot locked down. That's been the primary talking point of this episode, how we can't lock down our outfield.
That's totally valid. But you can't discredit that Bazana had, a lot of hype and a lot of reason for that hype on his name as well. I get why you are a little grumpy about it, but when you're buying his jersey in 2 to 3 years because he's that guy for the Cleveland Guardians.
Because I'm drunk at the opening day.
Right. I will gladly let you eat your own words and put it proudly on the show for everyone to see. I wanted to talk about one last thing and get your reaction off of it. We'll use this as like the final thoughts and hot take segment of the show, really. So this will be the thing we wrap up with today. And that is Shane Bieber was supposed to start in Akron on Friday. So this is being recorded on Monday. So a couple days ago, he reported soreness after throwing a bullpen session the other day. He met with the team's doctor and will consult with Dr. Keith, whatever, to determine the next course of action. Does this worry you whatsoever? How do you feel about it? Just period. How do you feel about it?
I think it's a safety precaution move. I don't think it's really anything serious until we know more. I think the last thing I saw is they were going to shut him down for a week and reevaluate, which just seems like hey, even if he did throw on Friday, it's not like he was going to go out, throw his, 3 innings, and then the next day be on his way to Cleveland. Like, we're still looking at another 2-month timeline before he's throwing in Cleveland. So I don't think there's really, any reason to rush him back in, especially coming off an injury as a slightly, I don't want to say older, but, he's not a young guy anymore in terms of MLB. So give him his time to come back, let him, feel 100% before he starts throwing again.
Yeah, I get you. I think a lot of people were hoping that he and talking and maybe even internally talking that he was going to be able to start pitching here by the end of the month or early July. With this, I agree with your timeline of potentially August at this point. I hope he just does what's right to get him back, because when he's back, he could be a huge asset for what is a team that's still only 8 games back right now and has a position to do something. Now, are we as high can be on the ability of this team to do something? Well, that remains to be seen. But yeah, I agree with you. Make sure that Bieber is doing everything he can to be Shane Bieber for us, at least for one more season, and give us all of the beautiful starting pitching that he has given us throughout the years. So I ask you the final question right now. Do you think at the deadline, we've kind of alluded through it throughout the show, the Cleveland Guardians are going to be buyers, sellers, or nothing? I left it at buyers and sellers, but you can also just do nothing as well. What do you think they're going to do?
The fan in me really wants them to be buyers. I still believe in, the talent this team has, and the runs that this team is able to go on can obviously produce something magical like we saw last season. However, like we've also talked about on this episode, you have to keep in mind who owns the franchise. I think, if anything, we'll be selling, but I think the most likely outcome is we're just going to pretty much keep it the way it is. Maybe we'll make some, like trade out one guy that's not, Emmanuel Clase. Obviously, Ramirez or Kwan aren't going anywhere for now.
Right.
But like, we might make a small time trade. I don't see us making a splash, and I don't see us really starting to sell off pieces either.
Yeah, I think it still depends on where the record sits as we get closer to the end of July. Obviously, this is a kind of early prediction, just where we're at with what we're seeing and how the MLB is shaping out. I think the most likely scenario is probably them just staying put, and I agree with you in that. I think selling is always on the table when the Dolans are your owner. With that being said, I think this team has shown and has been close to being competitive all season. I don't know if being close to being competitive is the right way I want to put that, but they've been in the realm of, only being 8 games back, and they're still fighting in the Central, which is a hard division to play in, which is crazy to say after so many years of it being just piss poor and horrible. And that's still with the White Sox being in the division as well. But I digress. Yeah, I think this team's probably going to stay put. If they make a big move, it's going to be something like Class A, but I don't see them doing that. He puts butts in seats for this team, and I think that's a big part of what's going on, right? The almighty dollar does make the Dolans the most happy. So I don't know. We'll see. It's still fun to pay attention to the Guardians right now, which the first time I did the ballpark pass, they sold at the deadline, and that was about it. It was kind of a dead vibe for the rest of that season, but I don't think we're going to get that this year. Matt, you got anything else you want to say to the people before I take this thing home and go watch some Love Island and do some other things aside from Cleveland baseball today with my girlfriend?
I do actually have 2 things I completely forgot about. One of them kind of on the same lines as Shane Bieber. I'm still excited for the John Means. I think he could come back and be another solid arm to start for us. But I hate relying on guys coming off major injuries, both for Shane and John Means.
Good call out, because I forgot to bring him up. That's something that we didn't touch on heavy on the channel yet, and I wanted to talk about that as well. Of course, he's looking really good for us, and then needs Tommy John, and that's the end of that. That just feels like the luck of the starting pitching rotation for the Cleveland Guardians in general. But continue on.
And then the second thing I had, which, I know we kind of said that, that was our final thoughts, hot takes, but I had one on deck ready to go. So I'm throwing it out there anyway. And it's not even really Cleveland related, so it doesn't matter at all. But Joe Mixon and Nick Chubb are going to be the best running back duo in football this coming year. And honestly, as much as I hate that it's not in brown and orange, I'm excited to watch Nick Chubb, the Nick Chubb that is now who he is today, get the opportunity to not be a workhorse, be a number 2 back, and that's going to be fun to watch. It sucks it's not Cleveland.
Yeah, I agree. I said something earlier on this too. I know we're doing a Guardian show, so we'll just count this as the final thought or hot take. Let me put that banner up for us real quick. It sucks. We love Chubb here in Cleveland. A lot of people are upset, but as soon as we see that shiny 2nd round pick, Ohio State Buckeye, running down people's throats and doing what he does best, it's going to be all better. And everybody's going to feel better about it. And it sucks because Chubb is a Cleveland Browns legend. Jimmy and D Haslam said so today, but all good things must come to an end, unfortunately, and he will be in the Ring of Honor one day, regardless, immortalized as a Cleveland Brown forever. I'm more so happy that he went somewhere not in division and is able to end his career with some dignity, because it was starting to get a little scary there that he wasn't getting signed by anyone or talked about by anyone. So I'm happy that we at least get to see Nick Chubb play, or attempt to play. Attempt to play sounds negative, but you know what I mean, one more time in the NFL. Matt, it's been a pleasure talking sports with you, as it always is, on a beautiful Monday night in downtown Cleveland. All that gloomy, boring, horrible weather got out of the way, got to watch some baseball, got to sit down with my boy. You have been listening to At the Office, a Cleveland sports show. Please, please, please do not forget to hit the subscribe button or the download button if you're listening to the audio-only version of the show. Matt, like I said, it's been a pleasure. Cleveland, until next time, we will see you Wednesday. Special start time, 9:30. And until then, this has been At the Office. Stay up, stay blessed. Peace.